Thanks for joining me live. And today we're going to be looking at multiplicity, cutting out, adding text, using masks, as well as kind of doing some kind of funky thing. So the original demonstration today was going to be based on this top boxer image, where I was going to be showing you using the likes of a select subject mask, or select subject. That's the kind of the Photoshop kind of ninja doing its job. I was going to duplicate it, and then I was going to go in behind and basically make a little bit of a selection, go and choose a piece of color from the actual glove, pressing OK to that one, and then creating a new layer, and then basically filling that with that bit of color to kind of create a simple kind of dynamic image straight away with us and things ready. But we're not doing that, all right? So we'll throw that one away, but we're still using Jabez as our kind of model. We're looking, as I said, to kind of Jabez came in to shoot with us, when was it, on the metadata over to the side here. It was, I don't know when it was. CR2, when did he come in to shoot with? So 15th of July, yeah, when we shot him. So, and because we did so much for him for his social media kind of feed and everything else with it, we just happened to kind of come up with some kind of black and white checker behind, which was just using our flooring, but actually as a backdrop. And when I was kind of getting ready for today, obviously the top image, the boxer, like I was just showing you, reminded me of the kind of the checker flag for the racing. And plus, he's very, very cool anyway, Jabez. And because I'm an F1 fan, reminded me of Lewis Hamilton kind of winning yesterday. So I thought this is what we'll kind of concentrate on today. So we're going to, first of all, look at an image to incorporate skill sets. So we're going to work our way through to add in some mask and text and so on. But we're also going to work in a multiplicity creative way. You'll either love it, you'll hate it anyway, but it's been basically in my Photoshop kind of skill sets that I do a lot with, pretty much for since 1996, since I was kind of developing my Photoshop skills and things. So let's start with an image. Yep. Let's kind of bring it into Photoshop to begin with. So if we choose this as a raw image, if I double click it, it has to go through a raw processor, the Adobe Camera Raw processor first, because it is a raw file. So there's several things on here that we can either try and correct, like the highlights actually onto the face here, oily skin. Basically, it doesn't matter how much dulling powder he had on him, it wasn't enough. So we knew we were going to actually have to fix this in post anyway. Next thing would be is the kind of the contrast level, to either increase it or decrease it. Anything that we do is basically going to affect one area or all areas. So we've got to watch what we're doing. And one of the key things that I do with the likes of raw files is process them twice. One for different reasons. So a bit like kind of when we're cutting things out, we do once for the hair and then once for the subject as a rule. But if we just increase the actual detail here in the shadows of the blacks, we've got some more information. So very, very fashion-y-esque, as it were. We could go in here and clean up the whites, yeah, but as we do that, as you can see, it's adding even more contrast into the likes of the problem here on the face, all right? So we want to kind of minimize that. Bear with me a second, I'll be back. Sorry about that. Okay, so we want to open this up in Photoshop and do the kind of the correction skills there. But as it were, you might want to actually kind of process this in several ways. Otherwise, you're going to kind of create even more work for yourself on the likes of the face. But we know we're going to fix this anyway. So let's open it up to begin with. So going through the raw processor, pretty much we've got our image now. We've got good detail in the blacks, but as we can see, we've got kind of mucky whites out towards the sides and so on with it. So if we want to kind of fix this straight away, if I just Control J to duplicate that image, yes, that is the same as me dragging the original here down to the plus, yeah, on the layers, and that will duplicate it anyway. So at this point, if we go to Control L, which is the levels, so a destructive adjustment that we're doing here, and we kind of just pick up on all the kind of the darkest of all the white that was here, and we just press OK for a minute. Now you can see we've kind of completely blown him out fully, even though we've cleaned up all the white and so on. We could now actually just click onto the mask tool, yep, and then in the brush, B for brush, D for default to put white on top and black, and then we just press X to put black on top. We can now start to actually paint through to reveal what we kind of just lost. Okay, so we're bringing back the information that we lost anyway. Now, obviously, as we're adjusting big parts of the actual white, you can see why it kind of went fully kind of detailing onto the jacket. And you might even say, well, I do want some more information down by here at that point, whereas we can see the masking that I've done on the side here. If I just press X and I basically start to actually paint some of this back, I can if I wish. If I was going to do that, though, I'd probably actually reduce the opacity down. If I just hit the number 3 on the keyboard, that adjusted it to 30%, and we can start to actually, bit by bit, start to actually paint some of this back and things really. So we do have the option to bring more and more into the image. Okay, so X, let's just bring my face back fully, 0 to 0, 100%. And there we go. So we're pretty close to what we need to do here. Obviously, as far as the edges of the photograph, we've got the lights in shot. So if you're going to crop this down later on, leave them there, ignore them fully. Or if you think you're going to need the rectangle image, retouch it now at source. So in this case, D for default, X to put white on top. We can now start to actually paint the brush and just paint these away no matter what with it. Let me just collapse the actions there. And we can just start to actually paint away. I could have used the erase tool if it was white underneath. There's loads of different ways to actually kind of create what we want. Once I'm here now, the big elephant in the room really, besides for me, is the kind of the marking on the face here with the highlights, and we need to kind of fix that. So let's go Shift Control Alt E. Now this makes a new layer based on all visible layers. So technically it's a new flattened layer above. Yep, so you can see that just came up here. Now what I want to do is go in and actually fix the actual face. Well, as a rule, before I do that, I'm going to make a duplicate of this one again. So Control J, and duplicates it. At this point now, what are we going to do? We're going to make a selection. So perhaps just get in the lasso tool, marking around the image, around the highlight. Then we want to just go into Edit and Fill. And this is where we want the content aware. Okay, just going to press OK. That's going to do its job. And then you might need to do this several times. Okay, Edit, Fill, the content aware, and it'll do its job. And you can see now when it gets to a point, it's going, oh, hang on a minute, what have I done wrong here? So if we just step backwards and we switch the bottom layers off for a minute, you can see what happened was the first time I hit the backspace to bring the Edit Fill command in, I basically deleted some of the information away. So if I just keep going backwards, you can see what it was there to begin with. Okay. Usually when you're working with a flattened layer, you can just hit the backspace and the Edit Fill command will come straight in and give you that option. Because I didn't do it, basically it erased it to show the layer below it. So even though we had these layers on, we weren't aware of exactly what we were trying to actually fill. So in this case, we're going to go up into Edit, Fill, and the content aware fill. And now that's going to do a much better job than it did before. It's still not doing a great job. So let's do it again. Edit, fill, and then press it again. Okay, and then you just start to work your way around the different parts of the image. You can see I just use Shift F5. That's the shortcut for it. But it starts to actually get rid of some of this information that'll just help us kind of repair a little bit. There's still going to be elements down by the nose here. Same thing that we could do the same thing with. We're just going to go in again and do the same thing here. Shift F5. Okay, but usually you're going to have to go in and fix these, and that is that when we're going down into the likes of the either the patch tool, so we can kind of come around him, and basically it starts to kind of help us get rid of the issue. Probably need to go in and just closer to the nose there, and just do it a little bit more. And so on and so on. And in the same way, obviously, we'd need to actually fix this around the top of the head. Try and avoid from doing too much at once, really, like I just did there. Just kind of pick up little parts, a bit like you were fixing lines under the bags of the eyes or whatever it would be. And if you start to actually just build all this up, eventually you can start to bring some of the texture through as well. This is a good one. He's got a couple of marks on his face there as well, some zits. So this is kind of something that we can use as well to kind of start to actually formulate it through. Last part is just a bit on the end of his nose and possibly that triangle. So again, where possible, we want to do this photographically, but when it's not, we've got to kind of fix it, things really. All right, so that gives us a basis of where we're kind of working from. At this point, remember that if I switch that one off and I switch the one underneath, we've still got what was that unrepaired image. So you might want to kind of retouched. You know what you're kind of doing now and things really. So let's get creative with this now for a minute. And let's start to actually put a little bit of a kind of a flavor to it. So I'm just going to go in and create a bit more of a dynamic kind of color. So I'm going to, first of all, just click onto the adjustment layers and select solid color. Now we did this last week as well, so let's stay on red. Okay, we've got a mask that automatically appears. If I switch it on and off, you can see exactly what's going on. If we want to, we can start to change the way that it blends. We saw this last week, yeah? And let's turn it into multiply again. In this stage, though, I want to basically create a little bit of an almost Union Jack-y kind of thing, but not a Union Jack, yeah? So I'm just going to just go in and basically do a thin selection down the image. Notice that when I select on the layer, mask, it reset or changes the colors, the default colors, to black on top and white underneath. All right. So if I now just Alt backspace, yes, that fills that selection with the black on the mask. Okie doke. If I do exactly the same thing again and I just work from the side, yep, in the same way, let me just move that up a little bit more. That's okay. And if I do exactly the same thing, basically Alt and the backspace, it fills it with the black to kind of hide the effect of the red. So straight away, we've got quite a strong dynamic image. Now, if you want to move the cross around the image, we'll have to unlink it. So if we unlink here, we can now move the actual mask around the image. Can you see it? So there it's kind of got our choice and things really, but you can see already, because the mask only affects the image here, it doesn't go right off the page and things really. But straight away, we've got quite a dynamic photograph that is creating a very, very strong kind of look and feel. So let's say we want to celebrate the 100 and we want to use some text. Let's just click on a new layer. And then I'm going to grab the text tool. and then we're going to click from the top left corner-ish down to the bottom right-hand corner-ish. What I mean is, I've allowed myself a little bit of a margin. No reason, but why not? Okay. It automatically fills it like we've seen before with lorem ipsum. I want this to just say 100. Yes. And then what I'm going to do is Control A to select the number, all that, and then use the the scrubby tool to increase the actual physical size of the 100 itself. And then just by clicking onto there, you can see straight away we've got the 100 as our kind of basis. So I've got two options here. I could create a white overlay to it. So in other words, if I just go in, double click the T, change from black into white, press an OK. Yep, and we've got our 100 over the top. Obviously, depends on what kind of link you want to do. So this, as far as the image is concerned, it's just there. It can be moved around. It's not linked to anything and so on with it. We can obviously throw it behind, and this will actually start to become invisible until we start to move it across the actual image itself. And that's because it's behind the actual other layer. I can move it down once more, and then basically it becomes invisible because obviously this image is now technically on top of the actual text layer. So there's different things that we can do in here. If I want to create a mask for the image, remember, if you just Control click onto the layer, the thumbnail, it automatically will make a selection based on the selection, as it were, the image. So if it was square and it was all filled with black, it would actually just select all of the outside of the image. If there was a square that is black, but it has a white cutout in the middle, if you click on it, it will actually select the black square and not the cutout in the middle and things really. So again, different ways to do the same thing. Right. So we want to kind of start to celebrate the 100, and we're in danger of kind of doing too many things. So I think if we switch off the text for a minute, that is a pretty cool photograph, no matter what. If we were to kind of do a bit of a twist, so if you know anything about Lewis Hamilton, he's very involved with the likes of Black Lives Matter. So you might stay, instead of using the likes of the red, we could use black. So if we select onto here, double click onto the color, choose black. And then straight away, we've obviously got a different look and feel. Now, because of the blend mode, yes, we'd need to actually move to one of the different kind of blends to actually start to see the difference in how it reacts from above. So it's, again, not very good here because obviously it's black on black and things really. So that has no use for us at all, agreed? So now in this case, we say, well, I want the same effect, but I want to actually kind of obviously show more of him. So in this case, what I would do is just do a quick cheat and basically go into the selection tool, select in the layer I want first, go into a selection tool, click on select subject. That will, because he's on white, it's going to be quite an easy cutout anyway, even though it will actually have some of the kind of the halo around the black because of the way that it was lit. And if I just go Control J now, that just gives me a layer without a white background, which means now I can actually push it above and we start to actually see him above the image. But we could see, because we were using all this kind of flare going onto the jacket and everything else with it, it's not as dynamic as perhaps we were seeing before and things really. So again, there's ingredients here, but there are sometimes where even with the best laid plans, it doesn't quite work out as much as you want it to be. So don't kind of punish yourself. But in this case, we're going back to the origin. We're going with this, what we did last week. We're bringing in that little bit of text as well. if I want that text to be dominant in a color, so if I wanted to switch off the red, and we actually want to make the red of the background behind, we could make the selection, create a mask on this, yes, and then I can basically go once more to kind of fill it with red if I didn't want to change it. Obviously, we can go in and basically, I meant to click onto here, in fact. I fill in with the red would be good. I can go in and basically fill it with the color. The best way here, though, is we unselect, we double click, and we just go in and we change the color of the actual text itself to begin with. Then in the same way, if we just drag him, the text behind the actual cutout, straight away, we've got an image that we're working on. So if you're aware it's celebrating 100 with it and its fashion sense, you've got loads of things that you could kind of work with here and things really. So again, really what we're trying to do is kind of look at what kind of celebrates the image. And what we're trying to do is create images that are dynamic in portfolio, so it will actually make people look at our work instead of just kind of going by another portrait. So even something that we can do to just gain an extra second or 2 seconds worth of viewing time kind of meets the brief of the portfolio. If you want to kind of just get rid of that mask at any stage, you can just drag it down to the bin and delete it. And you can see here, because it's still the 100 behind, then basically it's still there. The mask really wasn't doing anything. It would have only been doing things on the kind of the to reveal him behind. Okay, so that's why we had the mask on to begin with. Ignore that because he's at the front for now. Okay, so if we wanted to use the likes of this image, but we want to add that little bit more of a kind of a homage or whatever it is to the Black Lives Matter kind of thing, let's go and just choose another image of the photograph here. So this is during the kind of the shooting of the film. We were just testing the kind of the strip lights and everything else with it to check that they were firing on the same pattern and where they were basically being exposed and so on with it. I'm just going to make it a little bit darker, take out the color, increase the contrast a little bit, take the shadows down a touch, and then I'm going to open it up. I mentioned about this the multiplicity that I kind of do, and you've seen a touch on it to begin with there. But if I go once more and I just go to select subject, this is going to do a pretty good job, as it's just going to be used for background for me to basically use this onto the other image. Now, obviously, I could work on a blank new document and start adding pieces to it, or I can start to kind of work as I am here on a kind of the main image that I'm doing all the layers on. It's really down to you. So if I just kind of duplicate these across, first of all, what we're seeing is this is the Alt key. And as I drag it, basically, we've got the duplicate layer command going on and things, yes? So as I select one image, because I've got this auto select layer on the top left, when I click a certain image, it selects it straight away, okay? Then as far as the look and the feel to the images is where we're positioning them, if we say we want to kind of make a little bit more kind of a bigger kind of image on some of them, are they going to be in the foreground or behind? Now, because this guy is bigger here, yes, and we've got the muscle tone on the guy here, it's our decision whether we're going to move his layer by just dragging it down behind the other one or kind of put it up into the front. Now, in the reality of life is concerned, yes, this obviously the smaller image should be behind the bigger image. So the biggest image on the page realistically should be this photograph as well. So Control J to duplicate that layer, switch that one off for a minute. Let's go in and make this bigger. Now, this is a negative, okay? Why? Because we're technically increasing its sharpness and size by making it bigger, all right? So there's our negative to begin with, is that we've created a bigger transformation of this file. Let's not forget, this is the size that it should have been. So now by using the same document here, we are creating that little bit of a kind of a negative to the photograph, because we are destroying the original pixel, because we are enlarging it. Smaller, it's okay. Even if we created a smart object here and we made it bigger, we're still destroying technically the quality as it gets bigger. As we reset it to its normal size, would be lower, we retain that same kind of quality. And remember, if you do want to actually turn an image into a layer into a smart object or a smart layer, right click on the gray area of the layer, and then you go into convert to smart object. So let's Control J that. Whoops, sorry, Control Z, I meant, sorry, just to bring it back to its beginning. Now let's right click it and we'll convert it to smart object. Now if we increase its size, it's still destroying the image, yes. However, it's basically, at least if I made it smaller again, it's still going to go back to where it was. So as far as the images are concerned, the multiplicity is reference to obviously the multiple image of the same thing. I would say to you, if you are kind of doing something similar to this, try and make them different as far as the different sizes and everything else is concerned. If you want to add blurs to them, make them again into a smart object. So in other words, here, this image, yes, selecting it, and then basically clicking onto automatically does that layer, right clicking it, convert to smart object. Then we go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. Or let's do motion blur because of the racing thing. Bring it down again. Perhaps it doesn't work as good as I thought it would do. There you go, that's all right. Pressing OK. If I want to do exactly the same effect to, say, this image behind here, this image, yeah, what I'd suggest once more is right-click, convert to smart object. Yes. Now, from the motion blur here, I can alt and drag it onto the other smart object as well. And this will kind of give us the same motion blur if that's what we want with it and things really, okay? So it's got that same effect as you can see there. And if you just want a slightly different blur on another one, then obviously right click it, convert to smart object. And then we go into filter blur. Let's go into a Gaussian blur for a minute. I like that. It's looking good. And then I'm going to definitely convert to smart object with this big guy on the right hand side again. And we're going to go to filter blur. And let's do a motion blur, see how big we can get it. Is it going to be too much or too little? Let's press OK, yeah, like it. Okay, so remember at this stage, if you want to create a duplicate of one of the layers, so if you go into right click that layer and you create a new smart object via copy, yes, if we then kind of just switch off the Gaussian blur for a minute, we've got the image that is there, see it? So it's just him behind him. Let's make that Control T just, oh, let's make it a little bit bigger. because I definitely want the kind of the almost the silhouette look kind of thing with it. And we've adjusted just that image itself and things really. So from here, we've pretty much created quite a dynamic photograph throughout. Obviously, the color choice here of the text is really down to us. Do we really need to see the middle O to kind of show what it is? I don't think we do. However, we just want to kind of lose that kind of background layers. We can go in and switch them off and things really. So whatever is in the background, and all we need to do is obviously to see it as a white background here or black background. Let's go in now and just create a new layer. So create new layer. In this case, let's do D, and let's kind of fill it with black. So if by design we just drag it down below all the others, they're switched off anyway, but we can start to see now that the difference between the two. So there's it in black. A better way to do it, in fact, is to have it in white, yes? So if we do the control backspace to fill it in white, and then if you want to see what it's like with a different color, we go into solid color again. We're pressing the black in this case, because then you can actually turn it off and on to actually see whether it's going to be black or white or whatever it is. You want to avoid from having a black layer and a white layer. The reason being is that it's just about saving kind of document size and things really. So you can see here, even if I switch off that white layer, yes, when I put the solid color on, it fills with solid color behind him no matter what. So in this case, if document size in saving, we're actively looking to make sure we're not over making the file size way too big. We could actually get rid of actually that solid white, as it were. So from here, of course, you can go in now and basically just double change the colors, whatever you want to do to actually suit the kind of the project, the man, the outfit, the style, the styling, anything that you want to do and things really. So just pressing OK. And I think what we've got there is a really cool kind of almost ready to be double page spread in a magazine or whatever it be. If, of course, it was the likes of for a magazine where we need to kind of have an option of the 100, they could obviously then just decide to put these in themselves. They're going to go in the creativity, but you can see already what we've done is just putting that idea in and things really. But if you wanted to put the 100 in a vertical, let's click on a new layer. When we go over to the text tool, instead of horizontal type, go into vertical type, and then basically making your selection layer. Let's go 100. Double clicking again, making the fonts a lot smaller. Control A again, and we'll just make that really small for a minute. And then once we align the height of the image, if you remember what we did, we could actually go in and basically just pick up the kind of the kerning, or kind of making it closer together. We can expand up the text then a little bit more, pressing OK. Switch off the other one, so you can see the 100 is basically still simulating it again and things really. So again, different ideas for different effects, but again, looking at you using the likes of cutout, dynamics and so on, if you find that you've got the likes of your image and it's just a little bit too kind of washed out, like we can see here, we could go in and basically add in a levels or a curves adjustment. We can make the grays darker throughout, And if we didn't want it to affect the whole image, just using that little bit of a cursor, press the Alt key between the two layers, it just affects this image then here. And then all we need to do is B for brush, D for default, puts the white on top, and then press X to put black here. And then we can just go in and kind of start to reveal more and more of the kind of the image that we want in the brighter, lighter look and things. And then obviously it's kind of all balanced it together. Hope you enjoyed this Photoshop school. If you've got any questions, once I stop the recording, I'll follow those on for you. Thanks for joining me live. See you next week.